Chapter 12 of The Money Moon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Money Moon, a Romance, by Jeffery Farnol. Chapter 12, in which may be found a full, true, and particular account of the sale.
Uncle Porges, there's a little man in the hall with a red nose and a blue chin.
Yes, I've seen him. Also his nose and chin, my Porges.
But he's sticking little papers with numbers on them all over my Aunt Anthea's chairs and tables. Now what do you suppose he's doing that for?
Oh, who knows? It's probably all on account of his red nose and blue chin, my Porges. Anyway, don't worry about him. Let us, rather, find our Aunt Anthea. They found her in the hall, and it was a hall, here at Dapplemere, wide and high, and with a minstrel's gallery at one end. A hall that, years and years ago, had often rung with the clash of men-at-arms, and echoed with loud and jovial laughter, for this was the most ancient part of the manor. It looked rather bare, and barren just now, for the furniture was all moved out of place, ranged neatly round the walls, and stacked at the farther end, beneath the gallery where the little man in question, blue of chin and red of nose, was hovering about it, dabbing little tickets on chairs and tables, even as Small Porges had said. And in the midst of it all stood Anthea, a desolate figure, Bellow thought, who, upon his entrance, bent her head to draw on her driving gloves, for she was waiting for the dog cart which was to bear her and Small Porges to Cranbrook, far away from the hollow tap of the auctioneer's hammer.
"We're getting rid of some old furniture, you see, Mr. Bellew," she said, laying her hand on an antique cabinet nearby. "We really have much more than we ever use."
"Yes," said Bellew, but he noticed that her eyes were very dark and wistful, despite her light tone, and that she had laid her hand upon the old cabinet with a touch very like a caress.
"Why is that man's nose so awful red, and his chin so blue, Auntie Anthea?"
enquired Small Porges in a hissing stage whisper.
"Hush, Georgy, I don't know," said Anthea. "And why is he sticking his little numbers all over our best furniture?"
"That is to guide the auctioneer."
"Where to, and what is an auctioneer?"
But at this moment, hearing the wheels of the dog cart at the door, Anthea turned, and hastened out into the sunshine.
"A lovely day it do be for driving,"
said Adam, touching his hat.
"And Bess be thinking the same, I do believe."
And he patted the glossy coat of the mare, who arched her neck, and pawed the gravel with an impatient hoof. Lightly, and nimbly, Anthea swung herself up to the high seat, turning to make Small Porges secure beside her, as Bellew handed him up.
"You'll look after things for me, Adam?"
said Anthea, glancing back wistfully into the dim recesses of the cool old hall. "Aye, I will that, Miss Anthea."
"Mr. Bellew, we can find room for you if you care to come with us."
"Thanks," said he, shaking his head, "but I rather think I'll stay here, and, help Adam to look after things, if you don't mind."
"Then, good-bye,"
said Anthea, and, nodding to Adam, he gave the mare her head, and off they went.
"Good-bye!" cried Small Porges, "and thank you for the shilling, Uncle Porges."
"The mare is, rather fresh this morning, isn't she, Adam?" inquired Bellew, watching the dog cart's rapid course.
"Fresh, sir?
And that's rather a, dangerous sort of thing for a woman to drive, isn't it?" "Meaning the dog cart, sir." "Meaning the dog cart, Adam."
"Why, Lord love you, Mr. Bellew, sir!" cried Adam with his great laugh, "there ain't nobody can handle the ribbons better than Miss Anthea. There ain't a horse as she can't drive, or ride, for that matter. Not nowheres, sir."
said Bellew, and, having watched the dog cart out of sight, he turned and followed Adam into the stables. And here, sitting upon a bale of hay, they smoked many pipes together in earnest converse, until such time as the sale should begin. As the day advanced, people began arriving in twos and threes, and, among the first, the auctioneer himself. A jovial-faced man was this auctioneer, with jovial manner and a jovial smile. Indeed, his joviality seemed, somehow or other, to have got into the very buttons of his coat, for they fairly winked and twinkled with joviality. Upon catching sight of the furniture, he became, if possible, more jovial than ever, and beckoning to his assistant, that is to say, to the small man with the red nose and the blue chin, who, it seemed, answered to the name of Theodore, he clapped him jovially upon the back, rather as though he were knocking him down to some unfortunate bidder, and immediately fell into business converse with him, albeit jovial still. But all the while intending purchasers were arriving. They came on horse, and afoot, and in conveyances of every sort and kind, and the tread of their feet, and the buzz of their voices awoke unwonted echoes in the old place. And still they came, from far and near, until some 100-odd people were crowded into the hall. Conspicuous among them was a large man with a fat red neck which he was continually mopping at, and rubbing with a vivid bandana handkerchief scarcely less red. Indeed, red seemed to be his pervading colour, for his hair was red, his hands were red, and his face, heavy and round, was reddest of all, out of whose flaming circumference 2 diminutive but very sharp eyes winked and blinked continually. His voice, like himself, was large, with a peculiar brassy ring to it that penetrated to the farthest corners and recesses of the old hall. He was, beyond all doubt, a man of substance, and of no small importance, for he was greeted deferentially on all hands, and it was to be noticed that people elbowed each other to make way for him, as people ever will before substance and property. To some of them he nodded, to some he spoke, and with others he even laughed, albeit he was of a solemn, sober, and serious nature, as becomes a man of property and substance. Between whiles, however, he bestowed his undivided attention upon the furniture. He sat down suddenly and heavily in chairs. He pummelled them with his plump, red fists, whereby to test their springs. He opened the doors of cabinets. He peered into drawers. He rapped upon tables, and altogether comported himself as a thoroughly knowing man should, who is not to be hocussed by veneer, or taken in by the shine and splendor of well-applied beeswax. Bellew, watching all this from where he sat screened from the throng by a great carved sideboard, and divers chairs and what-nots, drew rather harder at his pipe, and, chancing to catch Adam's eye, beckoned him to approach. "Who is that round, red man yonder, Adam?" he inquired, nodding to where the individual in question was engaged at that moment, poking at something or other with a large, sausage-like finger. "That," replied Adam in a tone of profound disgust, "that be Mr. Grimes o' Cranbrook, sir. Calls hisself a corn chandler, but I calls him, well, never mind what, sir, only it weren't at corn chandling as he made all his money, sir, and it be him as we all work and slave for, here at Dapplemere Farm." "What do you mean, Adam?" "I mean as it be him as holds the mortgage on Dapplemere, sir." "Ah, and how much?" "Over £3,000, Mr. Bellew, sir," sighed Adam, with a hopeless shake of the head, "and that be a powerful lot of money, sir." Bellew thought of the sums he had lavished upon his yacht, upon his 3 racing cars, and certain other extravagances. £3,000, $15,000. It would make her a free woman, independent, happy. Just $15,000, and he had thrown away more than that upon a poker game before now. "Lord!" exclaimed Adam, "the very sight of that theer Grimes's pig eyes a-staring at Miss Anthea's furniture, do make the old Adam rise up in me to that amazing extent, Mr. Bellew, sir. I just look at him a-thumping and a-pounding at that theer chair." Saying which, Adam turned, and, elbowing his way to where Mr. Grimes was in the act of testing the springs of an easy chair, he promptly, and as though forced by a struggling mob, fell up against Mr. Grimes, and jostled Mr. Grimes, and trod heavily upon the toes of Mr. Grimes, and all with an expression of the most profound unconsciousness and abstraction, which, upon the indignant Corn Chandler's loud expostulations, immediately changed to a look of innocent surprise.
"Can't you look where you're going, you clumsy fool?"
fumed the irate Grimes, redder of neck than ever.
"Oh, ax your pardon, Mr. Grimes," said Adam solemnly,
But what with people's legs, and chair legs, and the legs of tables, not to mention sideboards and cabinets, which, though not 'aving no legs, ain't to be by no manner o' means despised therefore, what with this and that and t'other, I am that confined, or, as you might say, confused. I don't know which legs is mine, or yourn, or anybody else's, Mr. Grimes, sir. I make so bold as to ax your pardon all over again, sir."
During which speech, Adam contrived once more to fall against, to tread upon, and to jostle the highly incensed Mr. Grimes back into the crowd again. Thereafter he became a nemesis to Mr. Grimes, haunting him through the jungle of chairs and tables, pursuing him into distant corners and shady places where, so sure as the sausage-like finger poised itself for an interrogatory poke, or the fat, red fist doubled itself for a spring-testing punch, the innocent sinning Adam would thereupon fall against him from the rear, sideways, or in front. Meanwhile, Bellew sat in his secluded corner, watching the crowd through the blue wreaths of his pipe, but thinking of her who, brave though she was, had nevertheless run away from it all at the last moment. Presently, however, he was aware that the Corn Chandler had seated himself on the other side of the chiffonier, puffing and panting with heat and indignation, where he was presently joined by another individual, a small, rat-eyed man, who bid Mr. Grimes a deferential "Good day."
"That there Adam," puffed the Corn Chandler, "that there Adam ought to be throwed out into the stables where he belongs. I never see a man with so much growed to feet and elbers in all my days. He ought to be took," repeated the Corn Chandler, "and shook, and throwed out into the yard."
"Yes,"
nodded the other,
"took, and shook, and throwed out, neck and crop, sir. And now, what might you think of the furniture, Mr. Grimes?"
"So, Parsons," nodded Grimes, "so.
"Shall you buy?"
"I am a-going," said the Corn Chandler with much deliberation, "I am a-going to take them tapestry cheers, sir, likewise the grandfeyther clock in the corner here, likewise the four-post bedstead with the carved 'eadboard, and most particular, Parsons, I shall take this here sideboard. There ain't another piece like this in the county as I know of. Solid mahogany, sir, and the carvings," and herewith he gave 2 loud double knocks upon the article of furniture in question. "Oh, I've had my eye on this sideboard for years and years, knowed I'd get it some day, too. The only wonder is, she ain't had to sell up before now."
"Meaning, Miss Anthea, sir?"
"Ah, her. I say as it's a wonder to me, what with the interest on the mortgage I hold on the place, and one thing and another, it's a wonder to me she's kept her head above water so long. But mark me, Parsons, mark me, she'll be selling again soon, and next time it'll be lock, stock, and barrel, Parsons."
"Well, I don't hold with women farmers myself,"
nodded Parsons.
"but as to that cupboard over there, Sheraton, I think, what might you suppose it to be worth, betwixt friends now?"
inquired Parsons, the rat-eyed.
"I can't say I've seed it, and likewise felt it,"
answered the Corn Chandler, rising.
"Let me lay my hand upon it, and I'll tell you to a shilling."
And here they elbowed their way into the crowd, but Bellew sat there, chin in hand, quite oblivious to the fact that his pipe was out long since. The tall old grandfather clock, ticking in leisurely fashion in the corner behind him, solemn and sedate as it had done since, as the neat inscription upon the dial testified, it had first been made in the year of grace 1732 by one Jabez Havisham of London. This ancient timepiece now uttered a sudden wheeze, which, considering its great age, could scarcely be wondered at, and thereafter, the wheezing have subsided, gave forth a soft and mellow chime proclaiming to all and sundry that it was 12 o'clock. Hereupon the auctioneer, bustling to and fro with his hat upon the back of his head, consulted his watch,
nodded to the red-nosed, blue-chinned Theodore, and, perching himself above the crowd, gave 3 sharp knocks with his hammer. "Gentlemen," he began, but here he was interrupted by a loud voice upraised in hot anger.
"Confound you for a clumsy rascal! Will you keep them elbows o' yourn out o' my waistcoat, eh? Will you keep them big feet o' yourn to yourself? If there ain't enough room for you, out you go, d'ye hear? I'll have you took, and shook, and throwed out where you belong. So just mind where you come a-trampin' and a-treadin'."
"Tread?" repeated Adam.
"Lord, where am I to tread? If I steps backwards, I tread on ye. If I steps sideways, I tread on ye. If I steps forward, I tread on ye. It do seem to me as I can't go nowhere, but there you be a-waiting to be trod on, Mr. Grimes, sir."
Hereupon the auctioneer rapped louder than ever, upon which the clamour subsiding, he smiled his most jovial smile, and once more began: "Gentlemen, you have all had an opportunity to examine the furniture I am about to dispose of, and as fair-minded human beings, I think you will admit that a finer lot of genuine antique was never offered at one and the same time. Gentlemen, I'm not going to burst forth into laudatory rhodomontade, which is a word, gentlemen, that I employ only among an enlightened community such as I now have the honour of addressing. Neither do I suppose to waste your time in purposeless verbiage, which is another of the same kind, gentlemen. Therefore, without further preface or preamble, we will proceed at once to business. The first lot I have to offer you is a screen, 6 foot high. Bring out the screen, Theodore. There it is, gentlemen. Open it out, Theodore. Observe, gentlemen, it is carved rosewood, the panels hand-painted, and representing shepherds and shepherdesses, disporting themselves under a tree with banjo and guitar. Now, what am I offered for this hand-painted antique screen? Come." "15 shillings!" from someone deep hidden in the crowd. "Start as low as you like, gentlemen, I am offered a miserable 15 shillings for a genuine, hand-painted—" "16!" This from a long, loose-limbed fellow with a patch over one eye, and another on his cheek. "A pound!" said Adam, promptly. "A guinea!" nodded he of the patches. 25 shillings!" said Adam. "At 25 shillings!" cried the auctioneer. "Any advance? A genuine, hand-painted, antique screen, going at 25! At 25! Going, gone! To the large gentleman in the neckcloth, Theodore." "There be that Job Jagway, sir," said Adam, leaning across the sideboard to impart this information. "Over yonder, Mr. Bellow, sir, 'im as was bidding for the screen, the tall chap with the patches. 2 patches be pretty good, but I do wish I'd give him a couple more while I was about it, Mr. Bellow, sir." Here the auctioneer's voice put an end to Adam's self-reproaches, and he turned back to the business in hand. "The next lot I am going to dispose of, gentlemen, is a fine set of 6 chairs with carved antique backs and upholstered in tapestry. Also 2 armchairs to match. Wheel 'em out, Theodore. Now, what is your price for these 8 fine pieces? Look 'em over, and bid accordingly." 30 shillings! again from the depths of the crowd. "Ha, ha! You joke, sir!" laughed the auctioneer, rubbing his hands in his most jovial manner. "Oh, you joke! I can't see you, but you joke, of course, and I laugh accordingly. Ha, ha, ha! 30 shillings for 8 fine, antique, tapestried, hand-carved chairs! Oh, very good! Excellent, upon my soul!" £3! said the fiery-necked corn chandler. "Guineas!" said the red-eyed parsons. £4! nodded the corn chandler. £4.10! roared Adam. £5! nodded Grimes, edging away from Adam's elbow. £6.10! cried Adam. £7! from Parsons. £8! said Grimes. £10! roared Adam, growing desperate. £11! said Grimes, beginning to mop at his neck again. Adam hesitated. £11 seemed so very much for those chairs that he had seen Prudence and the rosy-cheeked maids dust regularly every morning, and then, it
was not his money after all. Therefore Adam hesitated, and glanced wistfully towards a certain distant corner. At 11 pounds, this fine suite of hand-carved antique chairs, at 11 pounds, at 11, going, 15, said a voice from the distant corner, whereupon Adam drew a great sigh of relief, while the Corn Chandler contorted himself in his efforts to glare at Bellew round the sideboard. 15 pounds, chanted the auctioneer, I have 15, I am given 15. Any advance? These 8 antique chairs, going at 15. Going, for the last time, going, gone. Sold to the gentleman in the corner, behind the sideboard, Theodore.
They were certainly fine chairs, Mr. Grimes,
said Parsons, shaking his head. So, said the Chandler, sitting down heavily. So, Parsons. And he turned to glare at Bellew, who, lying back in an easy chair with his legs upon another, puffed at his pipe, and regarded all things with a placid interest. It is not intended to record in these pages all the bids that were made as the afternoon advanced, for that would be fatiguing to write, and a weariness to read. Suffice it that lots were put up, and regularly knocked down, but always to Bellew or Adam, which last, encouraged by Bellew's bold advances, gaily roared down, and constantly outbid all competitors with such unhesitating pertinacity that murmurs rose and swelled into open complaint, in the midst of which the fiery-visaged Corn Chandler, purple now between heat and vexation, loudly demanded that he lay down some substantial deposit upon what he had already purchased, failing which, he should, there and then, be took and shook and throwed out into the yard.
Neck and crop,
added Mr. Parsons. That seems to be a fair proposition, smiled the auctioneer, who had already experienced some doubts as to Adam's financial capabilities, yet, with his joviality all unruffled, that seems to be a very fair proposal indeed, if the gentleman will put down some substantial deposit now. Aye, for sure, nodded Adam, stepping forward, and, unbuttoning a capacious pocket, he drew out a handful of banknotes. Shall I give ye 100 pounds, or will 50 be enough? Why, said the auctioneer, rubbing his hands as he eyed the fistful of banknotes, 10 pound will be all that is necessary, sir, just to ensure good faith, you understand. Hereupon Bellew, beckoning to Adam, handed him a like amount which was duly deposited with the auctioneer. So, once more, the bidding began. Once more, lots were put up, and knocked down, now to Adam, and now to Bellew. The bed with the carved headboard had fallen to Adam after a lively contest between him and Parsons and the Corn Chandler, which had left the latter in a state of perspiring profanity, from which he was by no means recovered, when the auctioneer once more rapped for silence. And now, gentlemen, last but by no means least, we come to the gem of the sale, a sideboard, gentlemen, a magnificent mahogany sideboard, being a superb example of the carver's art. Here is a sideboard, gentlemen, which, if it can be equalled, cannot be excelled. No, gentlemen, not if you were to search all the baronial halls and lordly mansions in this land of mansions and baronials. It is a truly magnificent piece, in perfect condition, and to be sold at your own price. I say no more. Gentlemen, how much for this magnificent mahogany piece? 10 pound. 11. 15. 17, said Adam, who was rapidly drawing near the end of his resources. 18. This from Job Jagway. Go easy there, Job, hissed Adam, edging a little nearer to him. Go easy now. 19. 20, said Job. 21, roared Adam, making his last bid, and then, turning, he hissed in Job's unwilling ear. Go any higher, and I'll pound you into a jelly, Job.
25,
said Parsons. 27. 28. 30, nodded Grimes, scowling at Adam.
32,
cried Parsons.
36.
37.
40.
nodded Grimes.
That drops me,
said Parsons, sighing and shaking his head.
Ah,
chuckled the Corn Chandler.
well, I've waited years for that sideboard, Parsons, and I ain't going to let you take it away from me, nor nobody else, sir.
At 40, cried the auctioneer, at 40, this one, nodded Bellew, beginning to fill his pipe. 41's the bid. I have 41 from the gent in the corner.
45,
growled the Corn Chandler. 6, said Bellew.
50,
snarled Grimes. 1, said Bellew. Gent in the corner gives me 51, chanted the auctioneer. Any advance? At 51.
55,
said Grimes, beginning to mop at his neck harder than ever. Add 10, nodded Bellew.
What's that?
cried Grimes, wheeling about. Gent in the corner offers me 65. At 65. This magnificent piece at 65. What, are you all done? At 65, and cheap at the price. Come, gentlemen, take your time, give it another look over, and bid accordingly. The crowd had dwindled rapidly during the last hour, which was scarcely to be wondered at, seeing that they were constantly outbid, either by a hoarse-voiced, square-shouldered fellow in a neckcloth, or a dreamy individual who lolled in a corner and puffed at a pipe. But now, as Grimes, his red cheeks puffed out, his little eyes snapping in a way that many knew meant danger, with a large D, as the rich Corn Chandler, whose word was law to a good many, turned and confronted this lounging, long-legged individual, such as remained closed round them in a ring, in keen expectation of what was to follow. Observing which, the Corn Chandler, feeling it incumbent upon him now or never to vindicate himself as a man of property and substance, and not to be put down, thrust his hands deep into his pockets, spread his legs wide apart, and stared at Bellew in a way that most people had found highly disconcerting, before now. Bellew, however, seemed wholly unaffected, and went on imperturbably filling his pipe. At 65, cried the auctioneer, leaning towards Grimes with his hammer poised, at 65, will you make it another pound, sir? Come, what do you say?
I say,
no, sir, returned the Corn Chandler, slowly and impressively.
I say no, sir. I say, make it another 20 pound, sir.
Hereupon heads were shaken or nodded, and there rose the sudden shuffle of feet as the crowd closed in nearer. I get 85. Any advance on 85? 86, said Bellew, settling the tobacco in his pipe bowl with his thumb. Once again the auctioneer leaned over and appealed to the Corn Chandler, who stood in the same attitude, jingling the money in his pocket. Come, sir, don't let a pound or two stand between you and a sideboard that can't be matched in the length and breadth of the United Kingdom. Come, what do you say to another 10 shillings?
I say, sir,
said Grimes, with his gaze still riveted upon Bellew.
I say, no, sir. I say, make it another 20 pound, sir.
Again there rose the shuffle of feet, again heads were nodded, and elbows nudged neighbouring ribs, and all eyes were focused upon Bellew, who was in the act of lighting his pipe. 106 pounds, cried the auctioneer, at 16, at 16. Bellew struck a match, but the wind from the open casement behind him extinguished it. I have 106 pounds. Is there any advance? Yes or no? Going at 106. Adam, who up till now had enjoyed the struggle to the utmost, experienced a sudden qualm of fear. Bellew struck another match. At 106 pounds. At 16. Going at 106 pounds. A cold moisture started out on Adam's brow. He clenched his hands, and muttered between his teeth. Supposing the money were all gone, like his own share,
supposing they had to lose this famous old sideboard, and to Grimes of all people? This, and much more, was in Adam's mind while the Auctioneer held his hammer poised, and Bellow went on lighting his pipe. "Going at 106! Going! 50 up!" said Bellow. His pipe was well alight at last, and he was nodding to the Auctioneer through a fragrant cloud. "What?" cried Grimes. "'Ow much?" "Gent in the corner gives me £156, said the Auctioneer, with a jovial eye upon the Corn chandler's lowering visage. 156. All done? Any advance? Going at 156. Going, gone. The hammer fell, and with its tap a sudden silence came upon the old hall. Then, all at once, the Corn chandler turned, caught up his hat, clapped it on, shook a fat fist at Bellow, and, crossing to the door, lumbered away, muttering maledictions as he went. By twos and threes the others followed him, until there remained only Adam, Bellew, the Auctioneer, and the red-nosed Theodore. And yet there was one other, for, chancing to raise his eyes to the minstrel's gallery, Bellew espied Miss Priscilla, who, meeting his smiling glance, leaned down suddenly over the carved rail, and very deliberately threw him a kiss, and then hurried away with a quick, light tap-tap of her stick. End of chapter 12.